Hello and welcome to the second episode of Soul's 2023 webinar series featuring presentations on a range of topics related to ecological land care. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. My name is Christine Earnshaw and I'm the Special Projects Lead with Soul. I'm happy to be your host today. I live in Ottawa, the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe. It would be wonderful to see where you're joining us from, so I invite you to put that information in the chat. Soul's Ecological Land Care webinar is held every 2 weeks on Tuesdays at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. Every month we feature a theme, and April's theme is biodiverse food forests and community gardens. You can find the monthly themes and schedule on Soul's website. To receive the Zoom link and reminders, please make sure to register. Before we begin, I'd like to mention that this webinar series and much of Soul's work is made possible by the generous and ongoing support of Gaia College, Canada's leading college for professional development and diploma courses in organic land care. Soul is also supported by its members, so if you haven't become a member yet, I invite you to do so. At the end of today's talk, we will open the floor for questions. You may ask questions via the chat, during or after the presentation, or by unmuting yourself and asking the questions directly during the question period. Please note that we are recording these sessions and they will be available afterwards on the Soul website at organiclandcare.ca. For today's presentation, I'm pleased to introduce Karen Aitchison, the Executive Director of Farmers on 57th. Karen has joined us today from Vancouver, British Columbia. Farmers on 57th is a non-profit organization which operates an urban farm with a community shared agriculture program, educational community gardens, and therapeutic accessible gardens in Vancouver. Without further ado, please welcome our guest speaker, Karen.
Thank you, Christine. And thank you for inviting me to be here today. I've also got Kristen in the back who's going to change slides for me. So thanks to Kristen for that. So yes, my name is Karen Aitchison. I am the Executive Director of Farmers on 57th, a not-for-profit society that runs land-based programming on Vancouver Coastal Health and City of Vancouver land. I am a settler privileged by colonization in the territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, a descendant from South African, British, and Swedish ancestry. Farmers on 57th and myself personally are on a journey of truth and reconciliation with the peoples of the land, and I plan to share a bit more about that during the presentation. So the objective of my presentation today is to tell you about Farmers on 57th and how we engage with and educate the community. So I'll tell you about our 1 acre farm in the city and the programs we run to teach people how to grow food as small plot gardeners and as small scale farmers, as well as teaching people about food that grows locally and how to incorporate locally grown vegetables and herbs into our diets. I'll also share how we're educating ourselves and community on creating trauma-informed spaces in our journey towards truth and reconciliation. So we can go to the next slide, Kristen. So an overview of our farm and operations. Farmers on 57th mostly operates in Marpole on the grounds of George Pearson Center, which is a long-term complex care facility and home for over 100 people. Here in this picture, you can see one of our main market garden fields and the wards of George Pearson Center, which surrounds our fields. So together with the Pearson residents, all of whom live in wheelchairs, we converted their backyard lawns, our public land, into a 1 acre farm in the city. So if we go to the next slide, we're going to see an aerial view at the top of, on this slide here, you can see the wards of the hospital jutting out westwards, and you can see the aerial view of our 2 main market garden fields between the wards. In our main field, near the top of the picture here, we have also an apple orchard and a mix of about 60 wheelchair accessible or in-ground raised garden plots. We also have a satellite site in South Vancouver, where we partner with the South Vancouver Family Place to run a communal garden program with new arrivals to Vancouver. So we'll move to the next slide. On our sites and 15 years into operation, we directly engage 80 community and grow your own food course gardeners. We have 75 CSA Harvest Box household subscribers, 35 volunteers, and 3 youth employees to grow, distribute, and eat over 23,000 pounds of fruit and vegetables each year. So the food grown on our farm and garden sites reaches at least 1,000 people weekly, May through October. And people of all ages and abilities in our programs develop ecological literacy, food knowledge, and growing skills, logging around 8,100 hours of outdoor activity with us. So we're building community resilience by growing food and providing educational, social, and recreational opportunities to urbanites. Our weekly fieldwork farm shifts, a part of our urban farming learning program, are often a highlight of people's weeks. So on to the next slide. I'll tell you a bit more specifically about our programs and how we directly engage people in growing food and learning what to do with it in the kitchen. So each year we enroll around 20 people in our Grow Your Own Food course. They pay $325 to access the 8x4 foot growing plot. They get seeds, seed starting materials, and tools from a shared garden shed. We host them at the garden for 12 sessions every second week, April through to September. Each week is a different theme. So first planning what to grow, getting seeds started, and then on to topics like weed, pest management, all the way to how to start a new community garden once people have that first growing season under their belt. So we teach ecological growing practices like mulching, using compost, water-wise gardening. As gardeners start harvesting their own grown crops, we host a garden potluck and people share their favorite recipes and cooking tips with each other. We teach people to observe the plants, the soil, and weather, to troubleshoot and respond accordingly to changes in the environment. We encourage our community gardeners to get to know each other and help water each other's plots, and to value the localized knowledge that many people gain from years of growing in specific locations and microclimates. So alumni from our Grow Your Own Food course have started new community gardens in parks, workplaces, and at home, making more growing opportunities available to more people in the community. So some of our course alumni, they put their name down for one of our 30 community garden plots at George Pearson Center. Our community gardeners apply for small neighborhood grants made available through Vancouver Foundation to host workshops and gather community gardeners and neighbors together. We're working to make the community garden welcoming to our neighbors who live in supportive housing. So we subsidize the $40 fee for several gardeners each year. And we talk regularly about how to share the space in a way that's nurturing and encouraging. For example, we often discuss how common it is for produce to sometimes be picked when we're not around, which leads to conversation about how to engage the people as they do pass by, to be a welcoming and warm place for people, offering food when we can, telling people about who we are and how they can get involved in a more meaningful way. On to the next slide. Another one of our programs is Garden Club. So every Tuesday, April to September, about 20 residents of George Pearson Center gather together with Vancouver Coastal Health volunteers, recreational staff, and horticultural therapists to grow food and flowers. The Pearson residents spend their time outside and interact with the market garden volunteers and staff and other visitors to the farm. The wheelchair accessible gardens are a source of pride and a place to visit with the family and friends. So the Pearson residents are very involved in their own placemaking through their own gardening efforts. During harvest season, the program staff, they blend the own grown fruits and veggies into smoothies to accommodate liquid only diets. And in our first year of programming, we had UBC graduate students show improved quality of life for the residents attending weekly garden club. So after proving the concept to George Pearson Center, they started funding this horticultural therapy program annually out of their operational budget. So we'll change to the next slide. We also have another program led by a horticultural therapist, Growing Eden program on the City of Vancouver land. And this is the one in collaboration with the South Vancouver Family Place, and it's funded by the Kerner Community Fund. Recently arrived families are introduced to gardening in a new climate through a weekly program of gardening, harvesting, cooking together outdoors, and eating, taking fresh groceries home. So adults establish support networks with peers and community resources through this program. The kids that they bring are engaged in the garden activity of the week. So it might be digging in the soil, making dye colors with vegetables, helping to prepare the food, harvesting flowers. And this garden is also located right next to an elementary school. So there's a flush of school students that come through the garden during the lunch hour as well. So they're connecting with those young kids as well. So the people in this program, they learn the therapeutic benefits of being outdoors and working with the plants, and making the time to de-stress and acclimatize to the new environment. So the next slide takes us back to George Pearson Center and our market garden, which is about half an acre of small scale intensive vegetable production. This employs 3 youth employees each year, including myself, not as a youth, but as an employee. We're funded by market garden sales, and our youth employees, their wages are subsidized by the Canada Summer Jobs Program. So our youth employees train and gain skills in irrigation, design, crop planning, pest and weed management, indoor seed starting, greenhouse management, field team leadership, soil amendments and soil care, composting, tilling, high tunnel and trellis installment. You can see a picture of our high tunnel there. They also learn food safety and harvesting, processing, distribution, customer relations, and community building. So our youth employees, they work with field teams of volunteers who've enrolled in our urban farming learning program. And together they all grow the food for our 75 member households in our community supported agriculture program, our CSA. So the learning goes always. We have experienced elder volunteers who do a lot of teaching to our youth employees in their first seasons of growing crops and operating a small scale farm. So we'll move to the next slide, which is a picture of the indoor seed starting room that these days in March, we're visiting twice daily, attending to the plant starts that we're raising for the Garden Club program, the residents of George Pearson, as well as the market garden. It's a purpose-built sunroom off the southernmost ward of George Pearson Center. It's equipped with heat control, electricity, water, and ventilation. So our youth employees get to see what purpose-built infrastructure looks like and what they could aspire to in future production systems. So we'll change the slide and I'll tell you a bit more about our urban farming learning program and the 30 volunteers that we recruit to the farm each year. So we actually have a growing group of core volunteers who return year after year. They're usually the ones that are retired and looking for that outdoor active community. And then we add new people each year. Sometimes people stay just for one season. So the people who volunteer with us are mixed. They're high school, university students, or they're people mid-career looking for a change or for better work-life balance. There's also elder folks, retired or on the cusp of retirement. And they really use it as their outdoor recreation center, keeping fit, active, and involved. Volunteers sign up for weekly farm shifts and make a commitment to work with us 1 or 2 days a week, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., a 6-hour shift. For the entire growing season, it's about 35 weeks, March through October. Our youth employees teach the group, and so do the elder mentors, the tasks of the day. And so the volunteers go at it. They're often seeding crops, they're watering, tilling beds, adding compost. Everyone brings their own lunch to stay for rich lunchtime discussions on diverse topics, often about the food system, growing challenges and techniques, also about our history of colonization, people's backgrounds, how we've all ended up in Vancouver, and differences between our upbringings and cultures. We'll change the slide, which is a picture of one of our pieces of infrastructure that one of our flower growers brought an art collective to come and paint a mural on. So in 2022, wanting to encourage diversity and inclusivity, cultural awareness at the farm, we hosted a workshop training called Understanding the Village for our core team of staff and volunteers. From our facilitator, Kathy Camilleri, we learned about being in a community rooted in the values of love, respect, kindness, and generosity. And we explored intergenerational roles in a traditional village community. Also learned about the history of colonization and its ongoing impacts on Indigenous communities today. So since then, as a farm community and a nonprofit organization, we've adopted these values of love, respect, kindness, and generosity, and aspire to them in what we do at the farm each day. So we'll change the slide once again. And I'll tell you finally, the last program that I have to tell you about today is our community supported agriculture program. So like I said, we have 75 household members join us each year. They prepay for 20 weeks of vegetables and an optional flower share that they pick up from the farm Tuesday afternoons, mid-May through to October. I wonder, I guess, is there another picture coming up? Is there?
No, that's the last slide that
I that was the last one. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I had available was it was a picture, which is also available through our Instagram account. We keep track of the weekly harvests. And so it's just an example of 1 week of produce that CSA members would expect to receive through the course of the season. They also receive weekly newsletters monthly through the off season. And on our Tuesday pickups, we chat with volunteers and staff during the CSA pickup about the vegetables they're receiving and how we best like to eat them and the cooking plans that everyone has for the week ahead. So lots of conversation over the vegetable pickup table. We invite CSA members, volunteers, and staff to gather for potluck at the farm in the early and late summer to spend time on the land and get to know each other better. CSA members are regularly encouraged to visit the fields to see what's growing and to pick currants, raspberries, blueberries, gooseberries when they're ready. The kids are shown how to pick and taste edible flowers, dig for worms, smell the herbs, watch the diversity of bee species buzzing around in the lavender. We also invite members to visit the farm during the winter months to harvest overwintering crops of kale, lettuce, turnips, radishes, carrots, beets, broccolini. We have a get together where we show them how to harvest those crops. crops and what to say if anyone asks them what they're up to address any other barriers we've uncovered as to why people might have a hard time entering the fields. We share gardening tips with CSA members who are starting new gardens and have questions. Often folks will start as CSA members and then they'll join in on other programs through the years. For example, John, he's one of our perennial volunteers. He took our Grow Your Own Food course last year to deepen his knowledge. He has a community garden plot this year, and he's been a CSA member now for 4 years. So he eats a lot of vegetables and clearly loves the benefits of being outdoors, and often visits with the Pearson residents who are socializing outside the front entrance. So that's the end of my presentation. Thanks again for having me here to tell you about Farmers on 57th. We've developed these programs since 2009, and every year is a bit different. Entering into this new year and changes afoot. So our intention is always to continue to develop diverse entry points for people to join in on the community and engage with us kind of where they're at. And I think, yeah, we do have the community growing each and every year. So I think people really enjoy these learning grounds that are so close to home for them. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Lovely presentation. And I do want to say that one of the reasons why we invited you to come and present is because what you just mentioned now is what you said about diversity. The theme is around diverse, biodiverse, but when we talk about diversity, we can also look at it in terms of community diversity. And it really seems that you've gone above and beyond, like just the idea that you want these diverse access points to be for people to engage in this, and people come with all different abilities and backgrounds and interests and what they commit to. So that's a really nice part of that. But why do you think that's so important to have that human diversity as well?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I guess I've been doing a lot of self-examination as to why I got involved. I come from an environmental background, very concerned about the environment, and but the more and more I work in this field and see what's happening with climate change and who's really impacted deeply by these changes, is often not the folks that look like me and have access to public land because we were able to strike an agreement with Vancouver Coastal Health. We've gained access to this land, and it's becoming more and more obvious to me that other people don't have those same opportunities made available to them. So for me, it's really important to make sure we're not kind of hoarding this amazing opportunity and really wanting people, especially the people that could benefit most from it, the people who are suffering the impacts of racialization and colonization, or being low income from whatever upbringing they've come from. Those are the people that actually need these kinds of spaces the most. And I think the people that have access to these grounds for whatever reason can often be gatekeepers, and we need to be vigilant that we're not excluding people just by our normal ways of being. I think I've been spending time trying to reassess a lot of the thinking that I've grown up with, and trying to have that inform how we're bringing more and more people into the community. The fact is we are actually in Marpole, we're white people are a minority, but that's not reflected in the community that we have at the farm. So it's just an obvious, glaring omission that needed to be addressed.
Very good point. I invite, sorry, others to put questions in the chat if you'd like, or raise your hand and you can ask a question by unmuting. But I have another one, and it's more personal. And it's just, sorry, I have a bit of a cold, but just to ask you if this work that you do, it's with all its complexity and that idea that there's a lot to learn and relearn, and what do you get out of this personally? What kind of rewards do you get from being involved in this type of community initiative and project?
Yeah, you know, through the years, I've realized more and more that so much of this has been just about me, like just wanting to be able to step out into my community and have a place to go where I didn't have to pay money, where I could actually put my hands in the soil, connect with and learn about, you know, the soil biology, all the creatures that we're living amongst, just wanting to have nature in the city without having to drive to it, and be engaged with it in a more visceral, active way than passively, because I think so many of our green spaces are for walking through. You know, there's these ideas around what things you can and cannot pick. There's kind of cultures of watching who's using this space and how they're using it, and feeling that sometimes we need to keep people in place doing the right things. And I guess I was just really wanting for myself a place where I could discover more of the natural world and deepen my own relationship to it. And I think I've benefited greatly over the years from just the therapeutic benefits of being outside with sun on my face and listening to the birds sing, and meeting people outside of my age cohort. So having senior volunteers who have decades of experience in this place and sharing their stories and sharing their knowledge about the different kind of animals that are traipsing through and how they've dealt with issues they've had in their gardens through the years. It's been a beautiful, well, almost 15 years that I've been involved in this project, and just seeing what happens when space like this is made available for community to come together in a hopefully like a less transactional way than I think a lot of what urban environments seem to promote and are built on. I think we need more open spaces for people to come together in a freer way.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned, and you've talked quite a bit about the idea of these spaces within our usually urban or rural environments that are meant to be accessible. So public green space doesn't always mean that it's accessible. There could be ways that spaces don't feel welcoming for some people. So it's really important to do all of that reflecting and asking and figuring out why they aren't. I should mention that Farmers on 57, this space is one of Seoul's 2022 Greener Greenspaces. So we intentionally decided we wanted to focus and put forward like this recognition program for those that are in public spaces, because they take on more than just being a garden or an urban farm. They are spaces within our cities that, and you mentioned the word opportunities, they have great opportunities to address many different social and environmental issues that we're facing, and can bring people together to learn from each other and take action. So I do have one question related to that. And how much do you think, if at all, this green space is sort of a response to address or mitigate climate change, or to take action on biodiversity loss, two major crises that we're all facing? And does this garden take action on those fronts as well, do you think?
I think we do, and on two levels. So, you know, in the physical realm, we are employing organic principles to our growing. We're, I guess you could say, we're trying to employ this carbon intensive model where we're building the soil life, and we're using approaches such as cover cropping, just lots of growing and having the soil continuously occupied with plants that are drawing that carbon dioxide from the environment and down into the soil and into the soil communities, building up that organic matter and organic substrate in the field. And then in terms of biodiversity, we're planting a very mixed crops, up to something like 35, 40 different varieties of vegetables and fruits and trees, as well as blooms for our cut flower program, perennial plants. So I think there's constant evidence of animal activity at the farm. So I think we're definitely part of the ecological sphere in terms of supporting animal life. And then I think, on the other level, in what we need to do as a society to address climate change and loss of biodiversity, I think we need to change humans. I think humans need to really dig deep and think about our place within these systems and understand how we need to participate in a way that's more beneficial and collaborative, decolonized. I think, we need behavior and mindset shifts if we're actually going to turn it around, where we're drawing carbon from the atmosphere rather than continuously pumping it out and exacerbating our issues. So I think by having a space in the city, especially where 70% of the world's population is living in cities, where it's so easy to be detached from the ecological systems that support all life on Earth, we need people to be connected in a very visceral way, to have them just understand better about the broader community, not be so human focused, I think.
Yeah, no, I can hear what you're saying, and just how it's important for the future, like just even with travel, if you have something very local and you have that opportunity to do so many of those things you talked about, like get the physical benefits, the health benefits, the community engagement, socializing time, like those are hugely helpful for our quality of life and our well-being. So having more opportunities to have these spaces where people can feel like they have enough and life is good and there's abundance and they can appreciate and feel hopeful that they are supporting, I think the better. But can you tell me a bit more about like the therapeutic part, because that is really interesting, and I think some people would be interested to know that you did capture some of the evidence so that the long-term care facility ended up incorporating this program into their operating funds. And so what was the evidence what were the indicators that you were looking at in terms of the positive outcomes of this type of initiative?
Yeah, okay, so the piece that was done by these UBC, I think there were occupational therapists, students out at UBC doing their graduate degree, and this was at our first year programming back in 2009. The paper is up on our website in our resources section. And I think a lot of their research was based in interviews with the residents, and they would speak with them after having participated in the weekly program. And the residents would speak about, I look forward to this every week. This is the highlight of my week. And not just for the residents. I hear our volunteers say that too. For so many people, this having the opportunity to be outside in community, growing food, growing plants, learning those things for the first time, that's really, it can be quite epiphanous for people and a bit of an awakening. And it's quite a break, I think, from the dominant culture of things that are done in the city. So we've studied the horticultural therapeutic benefits for the residents who are saying this is something they look forward to. They after a week's activity, knowing that they're going to come back the following week, they're spending their time thinking about things they can grow and create and bring to this space. They're thinking longer term, right? We're making short-term investments for long-term gains. So there's that hopeful kind of longitudinal attitude that they're able to bring into their lives. And I think seeing people who they live with day to day in this institutional facility, and probably a lot of the ways they engage with their caretakers inside and their roommates, it would be quite a change of activity for them all of a sudden to be outside in a more social environment, just kind of enjoying the weather and just kind of a bit more outside of themselves. So I don't want to put words in the people's mouths, and I think the research paper, it might even quote some of the residents, but that's what we hear. It's gardening is just such an inspiring activity because we're nurturing life. You know, a lot of the people in the care facility, they're depending on other people to take care of them, but in this program, they're taking care of plants and creating a beautiful space through their own ingenuity and collaboration with volunteers. So it can be a very empowering experience for people that are living such an institutionalized life.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's a really nice way to put it. And I'm just about to embark on a gardening project at my mom's. My mom just moved to a seniors residence, so same thing, huge garden and a way for people to be involved in something that involves family members as well, and the future and the inspiration of seeing what's growing and being involved with caring for something else. So that's very nice. One thing people might be interested in is any challenges that farmers on 57th have faced over the years. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. So, you know, myself as the executive director, and then my objective was always to learn more, and I was really happy to have the opportunity to get involved in this project when I did, and through the years we've really been building it into an entity that we're hoping has some long-term sustainability within the community. But the fact is that we're on public land, and actually back in I think it was 2014, a majority of this property, about 27-acre property, was sold by our public health authority to a development company, ONI. And so since then, we've been in conversation with the developers, with Vancouver Coastal Health, with the city of Vancouver, about the long-term future of an urban farm on this piece of land. Real estate is very valuable, and through those negotiations, you know, we would tour the developers and on the land, and there was this one quip was, oh, there's the $1 million cabbage over there, just by virtue of the real estate the cabbages take up on the land. Anyhow, so through that process, we were able to advocate for a 1-acre farm to be part of the rezoning application that went to City Council and was approved. And then the phases of construction started on the site. So this picture that we have in front of us still here is our old site, our old market garden site, which we were doing the market gardening from 2009 until 2018 on. Then 2018, when the demolition crew absconded our water hose to water down what they were demolishing, we're like, okay, yeah, no, we really need to move because the construction's coming. So it was a challenging year, 2018, when we had to continue our operations, me as a part-time staff person and working with our volunteers, doing our CSA vegetable production to earn the revenue we needed to pay ourselves. At the same time, converting a new area on the western side of the facility to be our new market garden growing space. So in 2019, we had our first production year at our new site, and there were many benefits that came from that move. We're closer to the residents' gardens, and there's been some advantages to that. But yeah, it was quite a transition that we had to make. And now construction is still occurring on the site, and eventually the Parks Board will take on ownership of a 3-acre space, 1 acre of which is going to be an urban farm, according to the rezoning application that was approved. So, it's still in the future. We haven't had many conversations yet on an ongoing basis with the Parks Board about what their intention is for the space. And my efforts have been to sustain our operations financially, which each year does feel a little bit more challenging. We're needing to come up with new innovative ways to gain revenues to the nonprofit organization just to keep it running. And so I would say one of our bigger challenges is that we're carrying on operations, and sometimes it's quite challenging to do the broader long-term thinking and strategic dialogue with the people that own the land and eventually are going to have a bigger stake in what we're doing. I'm anticipating how those conversations are going to go, and even how we can make available ourselves to be part of those dialogues in a way that creates what we're doing long term, or if what we're doing will have to just change to make it more economically viable or attractive to Parks Board or the development community, the new condo owners that are going to be on site. So maybe, yeah, some existential challenges, I think. Not sure how long we'll be able to keep doing what we're doing.
Well, yeah, that idea that the cabbage is so valuable, like that land is so valuable. And other ways of looking at it, it's valuable to grow food, but other ways. Anyway, I want to thank you very much for this presentation today. Super interesting, lots to think about and think for other sites as well. So please join us again in a couple of weeks. We have another presentation on April 25th and at the same time. So please check out our website at organiclandcare.ca for the schedule and to register for the next time. But thanks everybody for coming today. And thank you very much, Karen, for your presentation.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. Sorry, I'm coughing so much too.
Yeah. Sorry you're sick. I'm also coming down with something from my darling daughter.
Okay. Well, take care, today. Everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, take care, Karen. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.